I didn't know the person I trusted the most could destroy everything I had in a single night. The moment I opened that envelope on his birthday morning, my hands froze, my chest sank, and my world shattered into pieces I didn't think I could ever put back together. There it was, in black ink on white paper, a confession that wasn't meant for me. But somehow, fate had delivered it straight into my hands. Before I tell you how I got my revenge, you need to understand how this nightmare began. How love, betrayal, and quiet lies intertwined in ways that left me broken, but also determined to rise stronger, smarter, and colder than ever before. This is not a story of casual heartbreak. It's the story of survival, transformation, and revenge that would make the person I loved wish they had never existed. He smiled at me that morning, the way he always did, a smile I had mistaken for love, for devotion, for safety. I poured his coffee, set the small birthday plate with candles on the counter, and watched him scroll through his phone, blissfully unaware that the ground beneath him was about to crack open. I remember noticing a tiny scratch on the back of his phone case, meaningless at the time, but it would become the first breadcrumb in a trail leading straight to his lies. We had plans that night, a quiet dinner, a few drinks, laughter with friends, but something in the pit of my stomach felt off. A whisper of unease that I ignored, telling myself I was being paranoid. I should have trusted that feeling. I should have run. The first message I saw stopped my heart cold. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. My hand shook as I read the sender's name. Not a friend, not a co-worker, not anyone I knew. Someone else, someone hidden. And that was only the beginning. I dug deeper. Every message, every call, every hidden tab, every shadow in his life revealed the truth I didn't want to face. He was living a double life. Every kiss, every whispered forever, every memory I cherished was built on lies. My mind screamed for escape, for clarity, for sanity, and yet a strange, cold fire began to grow inside me. If he thought he could betray me and walk away untouched, he was gravely mistaken. That night, alone in our apartment, I let myself fall apart. I screamed silently into the darkness, cried until my pillow was soaked, and replayed every moment we had ever shared. Every small lie, every suspicious glance I had ignored. Every time I excused his behavior, they became a weight too heavy to bear. And then, amidst the pain, clarity. Pain became power. Rage became strategy. Every betrayal was now a tool. Every lie a weapon. If he thought I would let him leave unscathed, he had underestimated the quiet storm I was becoming. I reached out to the one person I never thought I would. My old mentor, the man who had taught me patience, strategy, and human psychology. He didn't need the details to see the fire in my eyes. Pain is power if you know how to channel it, he said calmly. Revenge isn't about being impulsive. It's about precision, elegance, and timing. You want him to feel everything you felt, but he'll never see you coming. Under his guidance, I learned to hide my emotions, read his behavior, and plan a revenge so calculated it would leave him speechless, destroyed, and exposed to everyone who mattered. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal became a stepping stone toward his inevitable downfall. The days that followed were a blur of quiet observation and cold calculation. I went through the motions of life, smiling at him when he looked, laughing at his jokes, pretending nothing was wrong while my mind replayed every betrayal over and over, searching for a pattern, a weakness, a way in. I watched him, studied him, and learned the man he truly was. The boyfriend I loved was gone. In his place was a man of lies, arrogance, and blind self-assurance. He thought I was oblivious. He thought his secrets were safe. That assumption would be his undoing. At night, I sat with my mentor, mapping everything. On a wall of notes, photographs, and timelines, every lie he told, every secret he carried, every person he deceived, they became pieces of a puzzle I intended to complete, not just for exposure, but for revenge that would sting deep and linger. Don't just want to hurt him, my mentor said, voice low and steady. You want him to understand what betrayal feels like. He must feel powerless, he must feel shame, and he must never, ever see it coming. I nodded. Every detail mattered. The night he bragged to his friends about his perfect girlfriend, we became the perfect context. The emails he sent to hide his other life became leverage. The double life he thought was invisible was now my arsenal. Every day I walked a tightrope. I acted normal, laughed at his jokes, leaned on him when he needed comfort, all the while feeling a cold emptiness grow inside me. It was like living in a mask, pretending to be someone I wasn't, while the part of me that burnt with revenge sharpened with every glance, every word, every lie I uncovered. I noticed things I had ignored before. The way his hand lingered too long on other women, the way he lied about his whereabouts, the subtle signs that screamed deceit. And yet, I didn't confront him, not yet. I needed control, I needed power, I needed the perfect moment. He was careless, and arrogance was his greatest weakness. He assumed loyalty was permanent, that love blinded me, that I would never see the cracks in his facade. He continued to flaunt his life, unaware that I was recording, documenting, saving every shred of proof, every text, every secret meeting, every whispered betrayal. It all went into my files, my timeline, my plan. At times I felt the cold rage bubbling beneath my calm exterior. I wanted to scream, to confront him violently, to let him see the raw pain he caused. But my mentor reminded me, revenge is not impulsive. Revenge is art. You've been hurt, yes, but don't let him know you're broken. Break him from the shadows, my mentor said. Make him question everything. Make him feel the weight of his own lies. And most importantly, make him alone. When he realizes it, I took those words to heart. Every encounter, every conversation, every smile I offered him was calculated. He didn't know that beneath my calm a storm was brewing, one that would leave him exposed, humiliated, and powerless. I began small. Publicly subtle hints, testing reactions, leaving accidental evidence for him to notice. I didn't act rashly. I let the tension build. The air between us became electric, charged with his paranoia, unaware that the real storm was entirely under my control. Inside, I was transforming. The pain of betrayal had forged a sharper, colder version of me. My heart had hardened, my focus intensified, and the fire of revenge consumed every corner of my mind. I wasn't just planning revenge, I was becoming it. The countdown to his birthday had begun, and with every passing day the air between us tightened like a rope being pulled from both ends. He didn't know it, but he was walking straight into the jaws of the trap I'd been building piece by piece, lie by lie, betrayal by betrayal. Everything was moving exactly the way I needed it to, slow, silent, deliberate. I could feel it every time he smiled at me, every time he kissed my forehead, every time he told me he loved me with the same mouth he used to whisper lies to someone else. It wasn't love anymore, not for me, it was gasoline. And every affectionate gesture he offered was one more drop, fueling the explosion I was preparing. He sensed something. Not enough to suspect the truth. He wasn't that perceptive, but he felt a shift. Maybe it was the way my eyes didn't soften when he spoke. Maybe it was the way I listened too carefully, too calmly. Maybe it was the way I didn't react even when he made excuses so lazy they insulted my intelligence. He asked me once, "Everything okay?" I smiled, "Perfect." And that was the moment I knew he was blind. Because if he understood even half of what I felt, he would have run down. My mentor and I spent hours dissecting every angle. I gathered evidence the way a surgeon gathers instruments, clean, exact, efficient. Screenshots, voice recordings, photos, timelines, locations, receipts, names, and then I began reaching out, quietly, carefully, to the people who needed to know the truth. Not all of them yet, but enough to ensure that when his world toppled, it would do so loudly, publicly, and inescapably. I contacted the girl from the messages. Not directly, that would make it too easy, but indirectly. Anonymous emails, blocked calls, subtle hints. I wanted her confused, scared, uncertain. I wanted her truth to surface naturally, so when everything collapsed, she wouldn't even realize she had helped me create the perfect storm. He thought he was planning his birthday dinner, reservations, guest lists, outfits, the usual. He had no idea he was planning the scene of his own destruction. I suggested hosting the celebration at his favorite restaurant, one that was elegant, intimate, and always crowded. One insisted on inviting all the important people in his life, his closest friends, his co-workers, his family, everyone who believed he was the man he pretended to be. He loved the idea. "It's going to be a perfect night," he said, and I whispered, "It will be unforgettable." He laughed. I didn't dawdle as the birthday approached. I tightened the rope. I planted small inconsistencies in his day, messages that looked like mistakes, hints he couldn't explain, moments that made him question his memory. He became restless, distracted, his lies tangled. He began checking his phone more than usual, deleting messages, hiding apps. I watched quietly, studying him the way a hunter studies wounded prey. One night, he paced the living room, whispering into his phone with panic dripping from every syllable. "I told you I'll fix it." "No, she doesn't know anything." Lies, lies, lies. I listened from the hallway.com/steady, unmoving, a shadow he didn't know was watching. My mentor saw the darkness in me growing sharper. "Revenge can consume you if you're not careful," he said. "Make sure you're in control, not the pain." But pain wasn't controlling me anymore. I wasn't drowning in it. I was wielding it. The ache in my chest had become a blade. The betrayal had become armor, and every memory he had given me had become fuel for the fire I was about to unleash. I looked at my mentor and said, "I'm not doing this because I'm broken. I'm doing this because he needs to understand what he turned me into." He nodded, slow, approving. "Then finish what you started." He came home late the night before his birthday, smelling like a mix of guilt and cheap perfume. His eyes darted when I asked how his day was. His voice cracked when he lied, and his hand shook when he touched me. That tension in the room was suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Yet I hugged him. I kissed him. I wished him an early happy birthday. And as he fell asleep beside me, Unaware that his double life was hours from burning to the ground, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing every detail of the plan with cold, steady precision. Tomorrow. Everything would change tomorrow. The truth would erupt in front of everyone he cared about. Tomorrow, he would finally feel the pain he had spent months inflicting on me, and he would have no idea it was coming from the person sleeping right next to him. The morning of his birthday arrived quietly, deceptively ordinary. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting the room in golden streaks that made everything look peaceful, a cruel contrast to the storm I had meticulously prepared. I moved through our apartment with calm precision, making breakfast, arranging small gifts, and smiling at him as he stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, completely unaware. He hugged me tightly, whispering, "Happy birthday, baby. This is going to be the best day ever." I kissed his cheek softly, letting my calm hide the fire simmering beneath my skin. "It will be," I said, but this was not about joy. This was the day everything he had built on lies would come crashing down. Checked my notes one last time. Every screenshot, every recording, every carefully saved conversation was ready. Every person I had nudged, every anonymous hint I had sent, had been timed perfectly. By the end of tonight, he would have nowhere to hide. I texted one last subtle message to the girl, nothing incriminating, just enough to make sure she knew the timing. She would appear, unplanned and shocking. The final piece of the puzzle, I placed a small envelope in his birthday card, knowing he would open it later, in front of everyone. Inside, meticulously arranged, were the proofs he never imagined anyone would see: screenshots, timelines, and evidence of every betrayal, every secret, every double life. He held my hand as we drove, chatting about trivial things, the menu, his friends, the decorations. I listened quietly, the silence of my mind at odds with the chaos building inside me. He laughed, completely oblivious, while my pulse thrummed with a steady rhythm of control. At one point, he leaned over and said, "I hope this birthday makes up for everything last year." I smiled tightly. It will. He had no idea how literal I meant it. The restaurant was full, vibrant with chatter, clinking glasses, and the smell of roasted meats. His friends and family waited, smiles plastered on their faces, unaware of the storm about to descend. He walked in confidently, arm around mine, oblivious to the tension stretching like a wire across the room. I kept my composure perfectly, even as my heart pounded. My mentor's words echoed in my mind: "Make him feel powerless. Make him alone when he realizes it." I had already signaled the girl to arrive discreetly, her presence a carefully timed disruption. She slipped into the restaurant unnoticed, just as I had planned, and took her place where he could see her at the perfect moment. He didn't notice her at first. He laughed, hugged his friends, joked, but then his eyes landed on her, the other woman, standing quietly by the doorway. Looking at him with a mix of fear and defiance, he froze. His hand tightened around mine. What? His voice was a strangled whisper. I leaned slightly closer and whispered, "Do you recognize her?" His lips trembled. "How is she?" And that was the moment the first cracks appeared. The confident man everyone believed in, my perfect boyfriend, began to crumble. I handed him the birthday card with a smile. "Open it," I said softly. His hand shook as he removed the envelope. The photos, the messages, the emails, every shred of proof he had worked so hard to hide spilled into his hands. The room grew silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Whispers spread. Friends leaned in. Family frowned. He tried to laugh it off, tried to lie, tried to claim some story I couldn't have imagined, but the evidence was undeniable. I watched calmly, sipping my drink, letting the silence do the work I had rehearsed for weeks. His face went pale. His eyes darted from me to the girl to the gathered crowd. Panic overtook him. Humiliation replaced arrogance. He approached, quietly, never breaking eye contact with him. No words at first, just a look that carried months of betrayal and resentment. He opened his mouth, tried to speak, and the crowd waited. I saw the fear in his eyes, raw, consuming, perfect. And then she spoke. "I'm done hiding. He's been lying to all of us. And now you know the truth too." The room gasped. I stayed still, letting the crescendo of shock and realization wash over him. This was the culmination of weeks of careful planning. This was the apex of my cold, calculated revenge. The silence in the restaurant was suffocating. Every eye was on him now, every ear attuned to the truth that was spilling into the room like a slow, unrelenting flood. He opened his mouth, words fumbling and broken, trying desperately to explain, to deflect, to reclaim some fragment of dignity that no longer existed. But the evidence, every single lie, every secret rendezvous, every hidden message was undeniable. I watched him crumble from the corner of my eye. The confident man I had once loved reduced to a trembling shadow. There was no bravado left, no charm, no smirk, just raw panic and disbelief. He looked at me, pleading silently, as though the woman beside him could somehow rewrite the narrative he had carefully constructed for months. I stepped closer, voice calm and controlled, carrying the weight of every tear I had shed, every sleepless night, every moment of quiet planning that had led to this point. You lied to everyone, I said slowly. You built a life on deception, manipulated the people who trusted you, and thought I wouldn't find out. I gave you every chance to stop, every chance to be honest, but you didn't. And now, I let the pause stretch, letting the tension suffocate him. Every person in the room leaned in, sensing the storm about to break. Now everyone knows who you really are. At that moment, I handed the girl from his secret life a folder I had prepared. She opened it carefully in front of him, revealing photographs, messages, videos, proof of everything. Gasps filled the room. His closest friends whispered, his family recoiled, and he stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to act, unable to salvage even a shred of the persona he had spent years crafting. I could see him unraveling in real time. His hands shook violently, his face drained of color. His voice cracked like broken glass. I can explain, he stammered, but no one was listening. No one believed him anymore. The lies had been laid bare, and the room itself seemed to reject him, a silent jury passing judgment on the man he had been. I let him squirm for a moment longer, savoring the precise timing of every revelation, the perfection of the plan. This wasn't just revenge, it was poetic justice, cold, calculated, and utterly deserved. My mentor's voice echoed in my memory, calm and steady. Make him feel powerless. Make him alone when he realizes it. Let him understand the weight of his choices. I had done all of that. He was powerless. Now, alone in front of everyone who mattered. Humiliated, shamed, and broken. And I didn't raise my voice. I didn't act impulsively. I simply watched as the consequences of his actions fell perfectly into place. Just when he thought it couldn't get worse, I revealed the final layer of my plan. All of this, I asked softly, letting my eyes lock on his. This is just the beginning. Everyone here knows who you are. And soon, the world outside this room will know too. I had posted the evidence anonymously to his work, his social circle, even mutual friends who weren't present. By morning, his reputation, carefully constructed, polished, and faults would crumble entirely. The man who thought he could cheat and hide would have no sanctuary, no escape, no one left to believe in him as he slumped into a chair. Defeated and silent, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Revenge had been sweet, cold, and precise. But the fire that had fueled me for weeks now softened into something quieter, a sense of closure. I had endured the pain, walked through betrayal, and emerged stronger, sharper, and in control. I whispered under my breath, not for him to hear but for myself. I am no longer broken. You may have tried to destroy me, but I am the one who survived, and I am the one who rose. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, the weight of betrayal now transformed into empowerment. Behind me, he sat humiliated, exposed, and powerless. Ahead of me, the world waited, full of possibilities, free of lies, free of deceit. Sometimes, survival requires patience. Sometimes, justice arrives slowly, in the quietest, most unexpected ways. And sometimes, the person who betrayed you, the most, is the one who teaches you how unbreakable you can truly become. The silence that followed my exit was not just in the restaurant. It was in the hearts of everyone who witnessed the fallout, stunned, reflective, and, in some way, shaken by the power of truth, revenge, and calculated justice. The days after his birthday felt surreal. The fallout from that night spread like wildfire. Messages, calls, whispers. Everyone who mattered had seen the truth, and the ones who hadn't would soon. He was a ghost in the social circles. He once dominated, a man stripped bare of his lies, his confidence, and his charm. I watched from a distance as his world collapsed. Friends who had once celebrated him now avoided him. Family members I had once admired shook their heads in disbelief at the depth of his deception. Even strangers at work whispered, carrying rumors that I had seeded anonymously. He had become the very embodiment of regret, humiliation, and isolation. For me, the change was internal as much as it was external. The fire that had once consumed me, rage, heartbreak, and betrayal had tempered into something sharper, colder, and clearer. I was no longer the person who cried alone at night, who trembled at the thought of being deceived. I was the person who had survived hell, taken control, and emerged stronger than I ever imagined. I walked through my city differently now. Every step was measured, calm, controlled. I smiled without masks, laughed without pretense, and let the world see a woman, no, a human who had endured pain and turned it into power. Revenge had not been impulsive. It had been calculated, precise, and deeply satisfying. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about justice. And the truth is, justice is often quiet, slow, and devastatingly effective. Watching him finally understand the consequences of his actions was more powerful than any confrontation, any fight, any argument could have been. I realized that betrayal teaches lessons no comfort ever can. Pain, when harnessed, can sharpen the mind, steady the heart, and give strength to stand taller than anyone who thought they could break you. Even weeks later, he remained trapped by the evidence I had released. His life, both personal and professional, was fractured. People who once sought him out now hesitated. Opportunities he had taken for granted vanished, and every day he remembered the night of his birthday, the night he discovered that I had been orchestrating his downfall with quiet precision all along. Meanwhile, I continued my life, carrying no bitterness, only the weight of experience, the clarity of survival, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had taken pain and turned it into mastery. I often walk alone now, thinking back to that night when everything changed. I think about the person I was, vulnerable, trusting, naive, and the person I became, resilient, strategic, and unbreakable. Sometimes, revenge is not just about making someone pay. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about learning that betrayal doesn't have to destroy you. It can teach you how strong you really are. I whispered into the night, not for anyone else to hear. I survived. I rose, and I became untouchable. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was a reminder, a quiet echo of power, control, and the unyielding truth. Sometimes the best revenge is simply to rise above, orchestrate justice with precision, and walk away stronger than anyone could have imagined.